There's an invisible Milwaukee all around us. A hitching post, a crooked bridge, faded ghost signs from long ago.
If we know where to look for evidence, our invisible city becomes visible. We can see the past everywhere and reveal stories.
This crooked bridge is a remnant from a time when Milwaukee was 3 separate communities. 3 men owned the land: Juneau, Kilbourne, and Walker. The 3 individuals had their own plans for this area, and all 3 had already begun laying down their street grid their own way. They butted heads at the river, as the separate grids didn't line up.
This contributed to a rivalry between the 3 communities. The conflict kept escalating to a point where Kilbourne Town destroyed 3 bridges over the river in order to isolate Juneau Town.
The conflict became known as the Milwaukee Bridge War. Eventually, they realized that the hostility in the air was scaring away newcomers to the area, so the rivalry had to end. The union of 3 towns led to the birth of a new major city, Milwaukee, with Solomon Juneau as its first mayor. But the evidence of the rivalry is still right here, with these crooked bridges.
Where you are right now might have been a market, or an Indian mound. It could have been a lookout point for the first weather bureau. Even City Hall was once something else.
There was once a lighthouse right here, where this sculpture is now. It was replaced by the North Point Lighthouse after only 20 years, but not before this Wisconsin Avenue lighthouse left its mark, thanks to a scientist named Increase Lapham.
This lighthouse is special because it was here where the idea to create a weather network from city to city began. By allowing several dozen observation points to gather their data and share it over telegraph wires, they could create an accurate warning system when bad weather was coming. This network became the nation's first weather bureau, and it began right here.
Sometimes there is evidence of a time gone by. Sometimes there isn't. When Increase Lapham came to Milwaukee, he worked as a surveyor to map out Wisconsin. While he was doing this, Lapham found many Indian mounds that Europeans had overlooked and built on top of. Lapham was the first European descendant to credit and catalog the Indians for building the burial mounds. They may be gone now, but Lapham's records have made a difference in history.
As time moves forward, streets change. Streets that were once built for horses and lined with hitching posts get paved and become used by cars. Names change. National Avenue was once Elizabeth Street. Reed became 2nd Street. East Wisconsin Avenue was called Spring Street.
And yet, streets stay the same, and nearly every major street was first laid down 100 years ago. Every street has a unique story behind it. Every named street, like Kilbourne, Lovell, or Plankston, has a person behind it. New things are built on the footprint of old things.
Milwaukee has been known as the Cream City for the past 150 years. Many believe that this name came from the mass production of cream and dairy, but that isn't the case. The name actually originated from the color of brick, which many older buildings were built from. The brick was exported to a few cities around Wisconsin, but anywhere you see it, you can assume the brick came from Milwaukee.
City Hall is a special part of Milwaukee's history because it's a landmark that hasn't changed much since it was built in 1895. When you are standing in front of City Hall, it's easy to picture this intersection in a different era. This bell, forged and created in Milwaukee, has stood high above the city, marking the passage of time for over 100 years.
This preservation didn't come easy. It's taken enormous effort and years of work in order to keep this building standing beautifully. When this building was built, it brought fame and wealth to Milwaukee. This was a 19th century stock exchange for grain, setting the price of wheat for the entire world. What was once the noisy trading floor is now a grand ballroom, covered in ornate detail and paintings filled with symbols of Wisconsin history and heritage.
Where you are right now was farming and fishing, shipping, trade and industry, music, culture, celebrations, life, birth, and death. People. There were people, right where you are. An hour ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago.
But suppose, just for a second, that you could see every human moment from the beginning until now, right where you are.
How would you make sense of what you see? How would you identify the innovators, the creators? If you knew this, would it change how you build your future?
Uncovering invisible Milwaukee expands our senses and allows us to see through time. We can take clues and inspiration from the past and build a bright future.